Dear fellow turntablists, 2.5 years ago I uploaded a YouTube video where I measured the true latency of Serato and my Pioneer DJM-S9 mixer. Using a 2011 MacBook Air, I measured a latency of 15 milliseconds even when setting the buffer size in Serato to 1 millisecond. Some people complained about the old hardware that was used, but a year later I obtained a 2019 MacBook Pro and I repeated the experiment. The results were virtually identical, demonstrating that the updated hardware does not improve the situation. A few years back, the company MWM released a wireless controller called Phase. At the beginning, the device worked through RCA cables that replaced the control tone of the turntable. Because of that, I was not very interested in the technology because the total latency could not have been lower than just regular DVS. However, a few months ago, Serato and MWM announced version 2.5, which enabled the so-called HID mode, whereby the position of the turntable is transmitted directly to Serato via USB. In principle, this could reduce the latency by 50% because the whole audio input chain can be circumvented. For that reason, I obtained a phase controller and performed latency measurements in the same way as I did in my older video. Before showing you the results, let me go through the setup. Here's the wiring diagram that I used to measure the latency of phase in HID mode. As in my older video, the main idea is to record and compare two signals, namely the direct control tone of the turntable and a second control tone produced by Serato. I simplified the setup a bit. I don't need a second mixer anymore to convert the phono signal to a line level signal. I'm doing this directly with the DJM-S9 mixer. The turntable is connected to the right channel via the phono input and the channel level is set to 0. You thus cannot hear it at the master output of the mixer. The headphone, however, is set to Q, so it forwards the turntable signal to the headphone output. The headphone output is then recorded by the secondary audio device. The output of Serato comes back to the mixer in the left channel and is forwarded to the master output of the mixer. This signal is also recorded by the secondary recording device. In my older video I recorded all 4 tracks, but it is enough to only record the 2 right channels as a stereo input signal. As previously, I performed 2 backward tiers and recorded the 2 channels. Here's a view of one of the recordings in Audacity. And here is a zoom in. Here you can easily see the delay in the bottom channel. As before, I calculated the delay between the 2 channels using the cross-correlation function in the programming language R. And here are the results. When setting the minimum buffer size of Serato to 1 millisecond, I get a total latency of 17.6 milliseconds. This is about 2.5 milliseconds higher than just regular DVS. So in summary, my initial hope unfortunately did not materialize. Nevertheless, I performed 2 additional tests which might shed some light on those results. In this setting here, I measured the latency of the RCA control tone produced by Phase. This allows me to determine the latency of the Phase device itself without the additional latency produced by Serato and the mixer. To do so, I just recorded the RCA output of Phase instead of the mixer output. And in this third setting here, I measured the latency of Phase in its original DVS mode without HID but with RCA cables. And here are all the results combined in one single figure. The latency of Phase itself is 6.6 milliseconds. This means that about 40% of the total latency is caused by Phase and 60% by Serato and the mixer. The latency of Phase in its original DVS mode is about 22 milliseconds, exactly what you would expect from a regular DVS latency of 15 milliseconds plus the 7 milliseconds from the Phase device. It all makes sense. Let me finish with a small comment on one particular feedback that I received in my last video. Some people argued that a latency of 15 milliseconds is not noticeable by human ear. It is roughly the time it takes for sound to travel a distance of about 5 meters. But while scratching, I immediately realized that my fast chirps did not work, whereas there was no problem with vinyl. And the reason for that is that the delay is only applied to the record hand. This results in a discrepancy between the two hands, and that can be picked up easily because the scratches don't sound tight anymore. If the delay were also applied to the crossfader, then I would probably not be able to pick it up. But there is no way to delay the crossfader of the DJM-S9. For 3 weeks now, I'm trying to retrain and to manually compensate for the latency of the system. But this is easier said than done. New scratching techniques are easier to adapt to. But I'm still having trouble with simple fast chirps. After doing them for over 25 years, they are practically engraved in my brain, and apparently that's pretty hard to untrain. But I will probably continue to try, mainly because of the huge advantage of the Phase device that there is no needle skipping. And this allows me to dabble into more aggressive record control techniques. This brings me to the end of the video. If you would like to add to this discussion, please leave a comment below. With that, thank you for watching, stay healthy, and have a nice day.